The grand, historic gates of Britain's royal residences have long stood as silent witnesses to the shifting tides of history, capturing the imagination of millions around the globe who watch every ceremonial movement and every private whisper with rapt attention. For generations, the crown has symbolized not just power and tradition, but also the delicate, often volatile dynamics of a family living under the permanent glare of the international spotlight, where every personal decision carries the weight of a national headline. In recent years, a deep and seemingly insurmountable divide has captured the public consciousness, transforming from a private familial disagreement into a sprawling modern epic that spans continents, from the fog-laden streets of London to the sun-drenched hills of coastal California. It is a story marked by emotional distance, public revelations, and a profound sense of isolation that has left observers wondering if the fractured pieces of this ancient dynasty could ever be truly mended, or if the gulf between them had grown too wide for any bridge to cross. Yet, behind the stone walls and beneath the heavy weight of centuries-old protocol, the quiet passage of time has a way of altering even the most stubborn perspectives. As the shared realities of aging, legacy, and the undeniable pull of bloodlines begin to gently chip away at the walls of resentment, the world has watched this prolonged estrangement with a mixture of fascination and sorrow, noting how the absence of communication has created a vacuum filled only by intense media speculation and the collective longing of an audience that remembers simpler, more unified times for the House of Windsor. This ongoing narrative, filled with dramatic departures and raw public statements, has reached a critical juncture where the quiet, unseen forces of family obligation and grandfatherly affection are whispered to be staging a monumental shift behind closed doors. To truly understand the gravity of this impending moment and to stay informed as this historic chapter unfolds live before our eyes, consider subscribing to the channel to follow every development, every breakthrough, and every hidden nuance of a story that continues to redefine the modern monarchy. The atmosphere surrounding the royal estates has shifted perceptibly in recent weeks, replaced by a quiet, highly organized wave of anticipation as specialized teams begin preparing for an event that many royal analysts believed might never happen within this decade. This is not merely a routine diplomatic visit or a scheduled appearance on a palace balcony, but rather a deeply private, highly sensitive, emotional negotiation that has been months in the making, conducted through a network of trusted intermediaries and carefully worded private correspondences. For years, the silence between the core figures of this drama has been deafening, punctuated only by occasional legal battles over state-funded protection and the bittersweet milestones of young children growing up thousands of miles away from their ancestral home. Completely isolated from their paternal heritage, those young children, born into a world of intense public curiosity, but raised in absolute privacy, far from the ancient castles of their ancestors, have become the unexpected focal point of a grand reconciliation strategy, representing a fragile hope for a family that has been battered by years of intense public scrutiny and internal discord. The sheer distance between the quiet life of Montecito and the structured, highly traditional world of the British court has magnified every historical grievance, making the prospect of a physical reunion feel less like a simple family gathering and more like a complex international summit requiring the utmost discretion. Behind the scenes, the reigning monarch, now navigating the advanced years of his historic sovereignty and facing the profound personal reflections that come with his position, has reportedly been quietly orchestrated a definitive shift in strategy, choosing to prioritize the unspoken bonds of grandfatherly love over the rigid adherence to past grievances. This silent, determined effort to extend an olive branch across the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean signals a powerful realization that some fractures are simply too costly to leave unhealed, especially when the innocence of a new generation hangs in the balance. The preparations currently underway are shrouded in an extraordinary level of secrecy, with palace staff and security details operating under strict instructions to ensure that the upcoming arrival remains as protected and unburdened by external pressure as humanly possible. As the scheduled month of this highly anticipated cross-continental journey approaches, the underlying tension within the palace walls is palpable, balancing the immense joy of a long-awaited family reunion against the delicate, unpredictable nature of a relationship that has been pushed to its absolute limits by public disclosures and legal disputes. Every logistical detail, from the choice of royal residence to the specific parameters of the security perimeter, is being meticulously scrutinized to ensure that this fragile piece is not shattered before it even has a chance to begin. The world stands on the precipice of witnessing a profound historical pivot, a moment where the heavy armor of royal protocol is temporarily laid aside to make room for the simple, universal human desire to reconnect, to forgive, and to embrace the children who represent the future of a deeply fractured lineage. The long-standing wall of silence that has characterized relations between the California-based royals and the British monarchy has finally shown its first major structural crack, revealing a series of highly sensitive compromises that have sent shockwaves through the global media landscape. According to explosive new reports originally published by the US Sun and later corroborated by major international outlets like Page 6. A definitive agreement has been reached behind palace doors that will allow the reigning monarch to finally reunite with his two youngest grandchildren during an upcoming family excursion to the United Kingdom. This monumental breakthrough means that the sovereign, who is now 77 years old, will have the long-awaited opportunity to spend precious, unhurried time with Prince Archie, who has reached the age of 7, and Princess Lilibet, who is now 5, marking a poignant chapter in a family history that has been defined by long-distance separation and public acrimony. Sources close to the royal household have disclosed that the monarch is absolutely overjoyed at the prospect of this reunion, as his separation from the children has been a source of quiet but profound sadness behind his official duties, particularly given that the young children have not set foot on British soil in 4 long years. The impending journey represents a massive logistical and emotional gamble for the Duke of Sussex, who has reportedly been harboring a desperate desire for his children to know their paternal grandfather and to establish a tangible connection to the ancient lineage from which they descend. Despite the severe personal fractures that have occurred between the adults involved in this drama, while the plans for the children and their father to make the historic journey are firmly locked in place, an air of intense speculation remains over whether the Duchess of Sussex will ultimately choose to accompany her family unit on this high-stakes cross-Atlantic crossing, given her prolonged absence from the nation. It has been noted by keen royal observers that she has not travelled to the United Kingdom since the deeply sombre days of September 2022, when she stood alongside her husband to attend the state funeral of the late Queen Elizabeth II, before quickly returning to their private sanctuary in California. The journey back to the heart of the British establishment is fraught with an undercurrent of intense domestic tension, as the scars left by a series of highly public disclosures continue to influence the behaviour of the key players within the royal family. The roots of this historic alienation run incredibly deep, tracing back to the earth-shattering decision in 2020 when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex officially chose to step back from their positions as senior working royals. A choice that set off a domino effect of institutional and personal consequences. In the years that followed, the emotional distance between the two sides was severely exacerbated by a series of explosive media appearances, including high-profile television interviews and the publication of the raw, uncompromising to 2023 memoir titled Spare, which exposed the raw inner workings of the palace and left relationships in absolute tatters. While the reigning sovereign has shown an uncharacteristic willingness to look past these deeply personal slights in his twilight years, choosing instead to focus on his role as a grandfather and the preservation of family unity, the same cannot be said for the rest of the immediate family. The true center of gravity regarding the remaining tension lies squarely with the heir to the throne, Prince William, whose relationship with his younger brother has famously cooled to the point of absolute freezing, leaving international analysts highly skeptical about whether the estranged siblings are truly ready to bury the hatchet during this upcoming visit. The palace has remained characteristically tight-lipped regarding any potential face-to-face meeting between the two brothers, preferring instead to keep the public focus entirely on the private interactions between the monarch and his young grandchildren, thereby avoiding any unnecessary escalation of a narrative that has already caused immense institutional strain over the last 6 years. PBS at the absolute center of this multi-year standoff, preventing previous attempts at reconciliation and keeping the young children isolated from their British heritage, was the incredibly complex and bitter battle over personal security arrangements. When the Duke and Duchess of Sussex chose to relocate to the United States and relinquish their official state duties, they were subsequently stripped of their automatic, taxpayer-funded security privileges within the United Kingdom. A decision that the Duke immediately viewed as a direct and unacceptable threat to the physical safety of his wife and children. This institutional shift triggered a relentless, years-long legal battle against the British government, with the Duke filing numerous petitions and taking the unprecedented step of launching a judicial review against the Home Office and the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures, widely known as RAVC. The intensity of this legal drama reached a definitive, exhausting climax in May 2025, when the Court of Appeal handed down a unanimous and devastating judgment that officially dismissed the Duke's challenge, with senior judges ruling that the government's decision to provide a bespoke, case-by-case security structure rather than automatic police protection was entirely lawful, rational, and justified. Throughout this grueling legal saga, the Duke's legal team made incredibly powerful and moving arguments, asserting that his safety, security, and very life remained at a constant heightened risk due to unprecedented media hostility and specific extremist threats, even offering a unique proposal where the Duke would personally pay the full costs of his own police protection team to ensure his family's safety. However, the British courts consistently rejected this financial compromise, leaving the family in a highly vulnerable logistical position whenever they contemplated a return to British soil, and effectively grounding the young children in their secure California estate while their father made occasional, highly restricted solo trips to his homeland for charitable events. 11KBW is show 1, recognizing that this legal deadlock was actively preventing him from fulfilling his deeply held desire to see his grandchildren before the irreversible passage of time made it impossible. The reigning monarch reportedly decided to bypass the rigid administrative structures and take matters into his own hands by extending a monumental institutional olive branch. In a dramatic shift that has redefined the parameters of this family crisis. The sovereign has officially invited the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to bypass commercial accommodations and stay directly within the secure perimeter of a designated royal residence during their highly anticipated visit across the pond next month. This crucial invitation changes the entire safety dynamic of the trip, as residing within an active royal estate automatically places the family unit under the formidable, permanent protection of the state's specialized security forces, effectively neutralizing the safety anxieties that have kept the children away for nearly half a decade. Furthermore, the monarch has reportedly taken a direct, hands-on role in personally configuring and approving the specific security arrangements for his son's family unit during their time in the country, ensuring that every movement between the airport, the royal estates, and any private family gatherings is executed with the absolute maximum level of protection and discretion. This profound gesture of paternal care and institutional flexibility demonstrates the immense value the sovereign places on this upcoming reunion, signaling to both the public and his own administration that the bond between a grandfather and his grandchildren transcends the bitter legal battles and public grievances of the past. As the final logistical pieces fall into place under an extraordinary blanket of operational secrecy, the international community watches with bated breath, realizing that the success of this meticulously planned visit could either lay the groundwork for a permanent, historic family reconciliation or serve as the final bittersweet chapter of a dynasty forever divided by modern fame and ancient tradition. The broader significance of this upcoming cross-Atlantic reunion extends far beyond the immediate joy of a grandfather embracing his distant grandchildren, presenting a profound and historic pivot for the British monarchy as an institution. In the grand tapestry of royal history, the Crown has always been forced to navigate the delicate, often agonizing balance between the unyielding preservation of ancient tradition and the deeply vulnerable human realities of the individuals who wear the crown. For decades, the public has viewed the House of Windsor through the lens of immaculate ceremony and stoic detachment, a philosophy famously summarized by the late Queen Elizabeth II's enduring mantra of never explaining and never complaining. However, as the world advances deeper into the 21st century, the modern public demands a different kind of monarchy, one that balances institutional dignity with authentic human emotion, making this impending family reconciliation a vital test of the Crown's contemporary relevance and resilience. The willingness of the sovereign to actively dismantle administrative barriers and personally intervene in complex security matters signals a landmark shift in how the palace manages internal crises, demonstrating that even the most rigid protocols can bend when the emotional survival of the family lineage is at stake. By choosing to prioritize the private role of an affectionate grandfather over the cold public persona of an unyielding monarch, the sovereign is quietly rewriting the modern rules of royal engagement, sending a powerful message to a global audience that the internal bonds of family must ultimately transcend the bitter public grievances and institutional titles that have threatened to permanently dissolve them, to fully comprehend the extraordinary gravity of this moment. One must look closely at the remarkable biography of the man orchestrating this quiet revolution from behind the throne, King Charles III. Born in 1948 as the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Charles spent a historic and unprecedented 70 years as the heir apparent, making him the longest-serving Prince of Wales in British history before his formal accession to the throne. Throughout those long decades of waiting, his life was meticulously structured by the rigid, often cold parameters of mid-century royal duty, an upbringing that frequently prioritized institutional obligations over personal emotional expression and left a lasting imprint on his early adult life. When he finally ascended the throne in his mid-70s, he did so with a deep awareness of the fleeting nature of time, a perspective that was profoundly intensified by his subsequent battles with unexpected, highly publicized health challenges. These personal vulnerabilities have fundamentally transformed his approach to his historical legacy, causing him to view his remaining years not just through the lens of statecraft and constitutional responsibility, but through the urgent, tender lens of family unity. The realization that his youngest grandchildren, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, are growing up thousands of miles away in a completely different cultural environment, developing American accents, and possessing absolutely no physical memory of their paternal grandfather, has become a source of profound internal reflection for the aging monarch. This awareness is what ultimately drove him to extend this monumental institutional olive branch, using his personal authority to guarantee the family's physical safety within the secure walls of the royal estates, and proving that his twilight years will be defined by an active effort to heal old wounds rather than allowing them to fester into permanent historical divides. The catalyst for this historic journey is equally rooted in the complex biography and evolving priorities of Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, whose life has been a tumultuous journey from the front lines of military service to the vanguard of modern global celebrity. Born in 1984 as the younger son of the late Princess Diana, Harry spent his entire youth navigating the psychological burdens of being the spare heir, a position that brought immense public privilege but also a profound sense of institutional isolation and media scrutiny that intensified dramatically following the tragic loss of his mother. His 10 years of dedicated service in the British Army, which included 2 high-risk operational tours of duty in Afghanistan, provided him with a profound sense of purpose and a deep, unbreakable connection to the global military community. This military heritage culminated in his absolute flagship charitable achievement, the founding of the Invictus Games in 2014, an international adaptive sporting event for wounded, injured, and sick servicemen and veterans that has become his ultimate life's passion project. It is precisely this profound endeavour that serves as the literal bridge bringing his family back to British soil, as the upcoming July 2026 visit is explicitly anchored around high-profile countdown celebrations for the 2027 Invictus Games, which are scheduled to take place in the industrial heartland of Birmingham. For Harry, now 41 years old and firmly settled into his role as a protective father, the motivations driving this return have undergone a radical transformation, shifting away from the raw defensiveness that characterized his explosive memoir and high-profile television interviews toward a desperate, mature realization that his children deserve to inherit a tangible relationship with the historical world from which they were born. The Times of India is show one equally central to the volatile dynamics of this high-stakes family reunion is the position of Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, whose meteoric rise from a successful American television actress to a prominent member of the British royal family completely redefined the global perception of the modern monarchy. Raised in the sun-drenched, media-saturated environment of Los Angeles, California, Meghan brought a distinct, highly independent American sensibility to the historic corridors of the palace. A cultural collision that quickly generated unprecedented global fascination but also intense institutional friction and relentless media hostility. Her decision to stand alongside her husband during their dramatic departure from the United Kingdom in 2020 was a definitive assertion of autonomy, leading to their current life in the ultra-private, highly secure enclave of Montecito, where she has focused heavily on independent philanthropic ventures and protecting the daily innocence of her young children. Her prolonged absence from British soil, having not set foot in the country since attending the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022, adds an incredible layer of dramatic tension to the upcoming July visit. As royal analysts remain deeply divided over whether she will ultimately step off the aircraft alongside her children to face a public that remains highly polarized over her historic role in the royal schism. To mitigate these intense external pressures and ensure that the fragile process of family reconciliation can occur in absolute peace, the palace has meticulously prepared a network of highly secure sanctuary locations, with historic properties like Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and St James's Palace under active consideration to house the visiting family, ensuring they remain protected by round-the-clock state security. The Times of India, however, as the final logistical arrangements are locked into place under an extraordinary blanket of operational secrecy, the world must also confront the stark, unyielding boundaries of this reconciliation process. Most notably, the absolute finality of the stance maintained by the heir to the throne, Prince William. The Prince of Wales, whose relationship with his younger brother has completely dissolved into a state of absolute estrangement, reportedly remains profoundly hurt and deeply betrayed by the highly personal disclosures aired in global interviews and the pages of the memoir Spare. While King Charles approaches this upcoming visit through the lens of an elder statesman and a forgiving grandfather seeking